The night was supposed to be fun, a break from the daily grind, a chance to unwind with friends, laugh, and forget about the little tensions that had been creeping into my marriage. Stephanie had been distant lately, but I chalked it up to stress. Work had been rough for both of us, and I figured we just needed a night out, something to remind us of who we were before life got so complicated. So when our friends invited us to a backyard party, I said yes without hesitation. It felt good to get out, to see familiar faces, to sip on a drink while the music hummed in the background. For a while, everything seemed normal. Steph laughed at jokes, leaned into me when she talked, gave me those looks that used to make my stomach twist in the best way. But then something shifted. It started with glances, subtle but there. She wasn't looking at me like that anymore. She was looking across the yard, eyes flicking toward someone else. A man I knew too well, David, my best friend. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe I was just being paranoid, reading too much into nothing. But then there were the whispers, the shared smiles, the way her hand brushed against his arm when she walked past. I felt like I was watching a scene I wasn't supposed to see. Then came the note. I didn't notice it at first. Not until David passed it to her, his movements smooth, practiced. Like this wasn't the first time. Like they had done this before. Stephanie tucked it into her purse so quickly, so naturally, that I almost convinced myself it didn't happen. But it did. And I knew, in that moment, something was deeply, horribly wrong. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I stepped away, pretending I needed some air. I stood at the edge of the party, watching, waiting. And that's when it hit me. She knew I saw everything. She knew. And she still left the party with that smug little smile, like she had one. Like I would just take it, like I was already defeated. But she had no idea. I wasn't done. I had already started planning my perfect exit. I barely slept that night. Stephanie came home late, later than she should have. I had left the party before her, claiming I wasn't feeling well. She didn't argue. She just gave me a glance, something unreadable flickering behind her eyes, and said she'd stay a little longer. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet tick of the clock, waiting. When she finally walked through the door, she didn't even bother making an excuse. She just slipped into bed beside me like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't seen what I saw. She smelled like his cologne. I turned onto my side, away from her, and clenched my jaw so hard it ached. I wanted to believe I was wrong, that this was all some misunderstanding. But deep down I knew. And the worst part? This wasn't something new. Looking back, I could see all the signs. The late nights at work, the sudden obsession with her phone, how it never left her hand anymore, how she started turning it over whenever I walked into the room, the shift in the way she kissed me, like she was distracted, like she was thinking about something or someone else. I had ignored it. I had told myself that rough patches happened in marriage, that we just needed time. But now the truth was staring me in the face. And it was ugly. The next morning, she was all smiles, acted like everything was fine. She kissed my cheek as she got ready, humming to herself like she wasn't breaking me into 1,000 pieces. I played along. I kissed her back. I told her I'd see her later. And the second she walked out the door, I grabbed her purse. The note. I had almost forgotten about it, but now my hands were shaking as I pulled it out. A small, folded slip of paper, hastily tucked away. I opened it, expecting some meaningless flirtation, something vague. But it was worse. Same place as last time. Can't stop thinking about you. Last time. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just an affair. This had been going on for a while. David, my best friend. I felt sick. But there was no confrontation. Not yet. Not until I had everything I needed. I wasn't just going to walk away from this. She thought she had won. But she had no idea what was coming. I wasn't the kind of guy to explode in the moment. Maybe that's what Stephanie was counting on. That I'd sit there, simmering, too afraid to face the truth head-on. That I'd let it eat me up inside until I convinced myself it didn't matter. But she underestimated me. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to make her feel it. I took a deep breath, folded the note back up, and slid it into my pocket. I had work to do. First, I needed proof. Real, undeniable evidence that would leave her no room to gaslight or manipulate her way out of it. Because that's what cheaters do, right? They twist things. They lie even when they're caught red-handed. I refused to give her that chance. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. That afternoon, Stephanie claimed she was running errands. "Target run," she said with a smile, kissing me on the cheek before grabbing her keys. The same affectionate routine she had done 1,000 times before. I waited exactly 5 minutes before grabbing my own keys and heading out. She didn't go to Target. She drove across town, past the shopping center, past anything resembling a normal errand. My pulse pounded as I trailed her from a safe distance, watching as she pulled into the parking lot of a cheap hotel. That hit different. It's one thing to suspect. It's another thing to see. She parked, took a quick glance around, then walked inside like she'd done it 100 times before. And not even 2 minutes later, David's car pulled up beside hers. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I could have stormed in right then. Could have made a scene. Could have turned this whole thing into one of those viral videos where the scorned husband catches his wife cheating and loses his mind. But that wasn't me. I forced myself to breathe. Not yet. Instead, I took out my phone and started recording. Their cars. The timestamps. A slow, deliberate video of me walking to the front desk, asking the bored-looking receptionist one simple question. "Excuse me, my buddy just checked in, but my phone died. Could you remind me of his room number?" The guy barely looked up. He glanced at the system, gave me the number, and went back to scrolling his phone. "Room 214. I didn't go up. That wasn't the plan. I had everything I needed. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about taking everything from her. She wanted to play games? Fine. I was about to end them. By the time I got home, my hands weren't even shaking anymore. I had what I needed: video proof of both their cars at the hotel, the note she thought she'd hidden, the room number, the timestamp. It was airtight. Now it was time to move. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't even going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me hurt. No, I was going to destroy her quietly. The first thing I did? I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best divorce attorney I could find. Someone who specialized in high-asset divorces and infidelity cases. Because here's the thing. Stephanie didn't just cheat on me. She betrayed me after I built everything for us. Our house? In my name. Our savings? Mostly my earnings. Her car? Guess who paid for it? She thought she was getting away with it. She thought she'd win. She had no idea I was about to leave her with nothing. But first I had one more call to make. David's wife. He had a wife. A sweet, kind woman named Rachel who had always welcomed us into their home. Always spoke so highly of my best friend. I thought about just sending her the evidence and letting her deal with it however she wanted. But then I had a better idea. A backyard party. One final act to end this all. Stephanie came home late again that night. I was sitting at the kitchen table when she walked in, her purse slung over her shoulder, her hair slightly messy. She hesitated when she saw me. "Hey," she said cautiously, like she could sense something was off. I smiled. "Hey, how was Target?" Her lips parted slightly, like she was debating whether to lie or just brush it off. She chose the latter. "Oh, just the usual." I nodded slowly. "Cool. Hey, I was thinking we should have a little get-together. A backyard party. Just us and some close friends. What do you think?" That threw her off. She blinked. Sure? When?" "Saturday." She hesitated again. "This Saturday?" "Yeah," I said, standing up and kissing her cheek like nothing was wrong. "It'll be fun." She smiled, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She had no idea that by the time that party was over, her life would be in ruins. By Saturday, everything was set. The backyard was decorated just enough to make it feel like a casual get-together. String lights, a few drinks, music playing softly in the background. It was exactly the kind of setting where people let their guard down, where they assume they're safe. Stephanie had no clue what was coming. She spent the day acting normal, laughing with me, sipping her wine like she wasn't sneaking around behind my back. Maybe she thought whatever tension I'd been feeling had passed. Maybe she thought she'd won. But I had invited some special guests. David showed up first, walking through the gate like he owned the place, flashing me that fake grin of his. I resisted the urge to punch him right there. Not yet. Then came Rachel, David's wife. She was polite, smiling as she greeted Stephanie. But I could see the tightness in her jaw, the way her fingers curled slightly at her sides. She knew. I had met with her 2 days earlier, showing her everything. The photos, the timestamps, the note. She had cried not just because of David, but because of who he had done this with. Someone she thought was her friend. I told her my plan, and she agreed. This was going to be public. A slow, methodical takedown. I waited until everyone was comfortable, drinks in hand, chatting about meaningless things. Stephanie sat next to David, her hand resting a little too close to his leg. That's when I stood up. "Hey, everyone. I just want to say a quick thank you for coming," I said, smiling. My voice was calm. Too calm. "But before we go any further, I think it's only fair we clear the air on something." Stephanie's eyes flicked to me, confusion creeping in. David shifted uncomfortably. Rachel took a step forward. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and hit play. The video started with their cars outside the hotel. Timestamped. Then the short clip of the front desk guy giving me David's room number. And finally, the note, the one David had slipped to my wife. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then, Rachel stepped toward David, voice low and shaking. "How long?" David's face went pale. How long?" Stephanie shot to her feet. "This isn't what it looks like." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Really, Steph?" I shook my head. "Because it looks like you've been sneaking off with my best friend for months. It looks like you thought you could play me for a fool. It looks like you lost." The guests were dead silent, watching. Stephanie's mask cracked. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I cut in. "I understand that you've been lying to my face. I understand that you threw away our marriage for him." I turned to David. "And you? You were like a brother to me. I trusted you. And you did this." David was frozen, like a man watching his whole world fall apart in real time. Good. Rachel wasn't finished either. She reached into her purse and pulled out her own evidence. Screenshots, bank statements, hotel reservations under David's name. She had been digging. "Guess what, David?" she said, voice eerily calm. "You're served." She tossed divorce papers at his chest. I turned back to Stephanie. "Oh, and as for you, consider this my official goodbye. Because this house, it's mine. That car, mine. Our bank accounts, already separated. My lawyer will be in touch." Her face drained of color. "You wouldn't," she whispered. I smiled. "I already did." I let that sink in before delivering the final blow. "Get out." Stephanie lost everything that night. And I never looked back. The party ended in chaos. Stephanie stormed out, humiliated. Her face twisted in anger and desperation. David tried to talk his way out of it, stumbling over his words, but Rachel didn't even give him the chance. She was done. And me? I stood there watching them unravel, watching the lies they had built collapse around them. When the last guest left, I sat down on the patio, taking a deep breath. The night air felt different, lighter, like I had finally shed something heavy I'd been carrying for too long. But the real fallout? That was just beginning. The first call came at midnight, then again at 2 a.m., then 3 a.m. She was spiraling. The messages started with apologies. "Please, let's talk. I made a mistake. You don't have to do this." Then, when I didn't respond, they turned into anger. "You're heartless. You're throwing everything away. You'll regret this." Then, finally, desperation. "I have nowhere to go. Please, just let me stay until I figure things out. I never meant to hurt you." I didn't respond. She had months to think about what she was doing. She had months to stop. And now it was too late. She packed her bags and left the next day. She tried to argue, tried to say she had a right to stay in the house. But when I showed her the paperwork, she had nothing. I watched from the doorway as she loaded up her car, pausing for just a second before looking at me one last time. "Is this really it?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, it is." And with that, she was gone. Rachel followed through with the divorce. She didn't just leave him. She took everything. Their house? Sold. Their savings? Split down the middle, but she walked away with the majority. Last I heard, David was living in a tiny apartment, barely scraping by. Karma moves fast. And the best part? Stephanie thought she could run to him, that after everything they could be together. But David? He wanted nothing to do with her once his life started crumbling. He ghosted her. No calls. No messages. She ruined her marriage for him, and in the end, she ended up alone. It's been months now. My lawyer made sure the divorce went smoothly. I kept the house, my finances stayed intact, and I walked away clean. I won't pretend it didn't hurt, that there weren't nights where I lay awake, wondering how things went so wrong. But you know what? I'm free. No more doubts. No more lies. No more waking up every day wondering if my wife was really mine. She knew I saw everything. She left thinking I was done. She thought she had won. But in the end, she lost everything. And I never looked back.